Hey guys, Chris from SurviveNnThrive here. Today I'm going to be starting my tree and plant identification series. The first one I'm going to do, first tree I'm going to do is actually the white pine, which is a very common tree where I live. I live in the northeastern United States. Um, this tree, I don't know if you can see this, but a lot of these trees in here, starting with all these little saplings and everything, these are all saplings, and including big trees like this. These are white pines. I got another smaller one growing over there. A bunch right there. They're probably the most common tree you'll find around here. So I thought I'd go over today just a few different things while I'm out my hike. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you with the white pine, I'm getting this camera a little close to me. First thing I'm going to show you with the white pine is its needles. Now, this is a sapling right here. This tree is a sapling of the white pine. As you can see, it's a soft wood. That's something I want to point out. Most pines are softwood. Actually, I think all of them are. Now, these needles came off from one of these. Now, let me just spin that around for you. And if you notice, there's 5 pine needles in the bunch. It's very rare that you find one with 3 or 4. Usually what happens is one will rot or something, like this right here. If you can see this one right here, there's a tan one in there, it's dead. You'll have something like that happen, but the majority of them on the pine will actually have 5 needles. And something easy. Hold on, let me fan these out for you. So you can see, there we go. You can see the 5 needles. A simple way to remember this, or remember the white pine, is white. The word white has 5 letters, and the white pine has 5 needles. Now, another thing I want you to notice is the difference between a sapling's bark and a full-grown pine's bark. So, the bark on the sapling, if you can see, is it's all one piece basically, and it's very, very soft. I can indent that with my fingernail. Versus the grown white pine, which if you see right here, it's a hard bark, it's a rough bark. If you're tying rope around it, the rope will grip to it and stick to it like Velcro almost. But I want you to notice the coloring. Where the chips come off, you'll see a few spots where chips have come off. It's a reddish brown color on there, and then it'll have these segments of bark that make these deep ridges. And what will happen is, let me see if I can find, here we go. If you notice, this is like a pine deposit where a branch used to be or something, and the bark's exposed. So what happens is with a white pine, it will bleed out, if you want to put it that way, and sap will actually make a deposit in an area, and it'll actually run down these crevices. It helps in the process of making new bark and things like that, and protecting the tree. I'm just gonna back up and show you this tree. The sun, it's about noon, so the sun's right about above me. So let's see if I can do this without blinding you. Okay, so if you see, starting at the base and just working our way up. Now, so as you can see, working at the base, and we're just gonna go up the tree. And if you notice, white pine it's a fairly big tree. They can grow anywhere from like 120 to, I think, a few cases 180, but they'll usually cap out at around like the 120, 140 range for a white pine. That's about average. Another little tidbit is when they get about this big, or they get really big like this, a lot of people around here will call them wolf pines. I don't know where it originated from or how it originated, but people will reference these as white pine when they get wolf pine when they get this big. So another thing I wanted to tell you about white pine is its vitamin C content. It has a very, very high vitamin C content. You can actually make pine needle tea, if you've ever heard of that rumor, or some people don't believe it, you can. It will give you a good concentration of vitamin C, but you don't want to boil the needles in the water. It will actually lose some of its vitamin C, or a lot of its vitamin C content. You can actually just eat pine needles as is. They have, I don't know, it's not really a awesome flavor. They don't really have a strong flavor. You'll get like a turpentine-y. It's almost exactly what you would expect pine to taste like. So needles on these trees are edible. Another thing I wanted to point out is the bark is actually edible. The inner bark. Let me stress the inner bark. Let me just cut a piece off here. Okay guys, so I removed the top layer. I cut this little slit out of it, and then I peeled up the inner bark. So I'm just gonna break this off, like finish it off and get it out. And so it's not cooperating. Alright. So this is what I'm talking about. It's a piece of the inner bark. I cut off the brown, the outside bark, and then peeled this off. Another thing you do if you're going to do this, to eat this, do not wring the tree out. This will not kill the tree, but if you wring it out, it will kill it. That works with any tree. But this stuff actually here is actually edible. This has a little more of a bitter flavor than the needles do. Native Americans used to eat this during winter months because it was just readily available, easy to get. And it carries some of the vitamin C content. You're going to get more from the needles than you will from the bark, but you can eat the bark. It's a little chewy, if you noticed. But that's perfectly edible. So that's something I wanted to point out. Another thing I wanted to point out is we actually got one right here. White pine will drop pine cones, and they look just like this. They're very elongated pine cones. So once they drop, they're actually seed pods, if you didn't know. When they drop, they'll be, for the most part, open, much like this, to dispense the seeds. So that's another thing you can use to identify the tree. Now I just wanted to point out that white pine is a medicinal tree, and what that means is it has medical uses. It can be used as medicine, and it's got some other uses other than that, but I'm going to go over some of the medical uses now. If you make pine tar, which is if you take roots from the pine tree and you actually like smolder them, this can actually be used to cure things such as tapeworm or roundworm if you're stuck in a survival situation and you find that you do have one. I'll be going over in a later video how to make pine tar and how to apply it medically. Another thing is if you make pine pitch, or you use the resin, like see how this stuff, you can just pull off these pieces of sap or whatever you want to call it. If you take those resin deposits, you can, if you boil them down, you can actually make pitch. I'll be showing you how to do that in a later video too. And pitch can be used to, a while ago it was used to waterproof things such as buckets or canoes and stuff like that. You could fill in the cracks with it. You can also use the pine resin to heal wounds, to put over a wound to keep it shut, or use it as an adhesive. So those are some of the medical things. Also, before I finish there, I just almost forgot. As I've been saying, the vitamin C content is really high in the pine needles and these trees. So in nature, your immune system actually gets a boost from vitamin C, and just eating meat and stuff in nature, you're not going to get those vitamins and minerals that you get from vegetables and fruits. So making a pine needle tea or something like that, you can actually replace some of the vitamin C you've lost. It can actually be used as a cure for scurvy, which I haven't heard of anybody really having scurvy lately. It was more back when there was a lot more sailing to be done. A lot of crew members would end up getting scurvy, and they'd use oranges and stuff like that to heal it, but this can be used to heal any vitamin C deficiencies if you're stuck out in the wild. Okay guys, so today I showed you the white pine. I showed you its uses and such. I went over some of the medicinal things you can use this tree for. It's a soft wood. Another thing I'd like to add is the pine resin. I forgot to mention this. The pine resin, you can actually make a thing that ignites pretty well. You can use it as a fire starter. Also, this is a controversial thing. Some people say it's a good thing to use, some people say it's not. People will use dried out white pine. It's a soft wood. If I can find, actually see how these branches are dead. And they'll dry out and the bark will fall off. And you can actually make a bow drill set or a fire plow, anything like that with it. And in my experiences, it actually works really well. I've actually had people tell me that it doesn't make an ember too well. A tree, if you want to stick to around in the northeastern United States, that's really good for bow drill sets or any kind of primitive fire, it would be the cedar. I'm actually carrying some of that right here. It also works as a natural insect repellent. It doesn't work just like this. You process it down in your hand and get the oils out of the leaves, and you can actually rub it on your skin. It's actually working really well for me right now. Anyway, so I'll get into that in a later video with the cedar. But so I showed you the white pine. I showed you how to identify it with the you can do it with the needles, the pine cones. If you notice, there's pine cones all over the ground. You get some there. They're just everywhere. You can use the needles, the actual pine cones. Looking at the bark, it's a very rough textured bark, deep ridges. You can actually get your fingers in here and grab stuff. It chips off. You'll also notice to identify a pine or a white pine, you'll actually get a lot of these resin deposits. But yeah, so that's the white pine. If you have any questions regarding the white pine or its uses or anything like that, feel free to email me with any questions, comments, regards about it. I'll try to get back to you within 24 hours if possible. That's my goal. So thanks for checking out my channel. Thanks for checking out my videos. I hope you enjoy this new series I'm going to be adding. Hopefully I put it up with the launch of my channel. But yeah, so going to continue my hike, film a few more trees, so hope to see you around.